57. Yeah. Happy belated birthday.
Yeah, right. This is the first time we're recording after my birthday, which
Yeah. Usually we could do maybe once or twice a week, but here it is a Thursday and your birthday was on a Sunday.
yeah,
We had cacao that Sunday,
it was a tough birthday. So
which
we're gonna start with that.
well, the cacao kind of opens you up and makes it more whatever it is that makes it more.
Yeah, it makes it more honest. I think
Yeah.
like whatever, like I guess maybe the barriers of self kind of go away. But did I scooch down to my microphone? Did not scooch down.
Mm.
Given always adjusting my microphone. So yeah, so I mean, I think the topic in general is going to be the shift that
The
has
shift.
happened.
It's a big shift.
That like I channeled, I guess, a set of messages, and they basically said that the shift was taking place, and I think it like settled in, and so there's two parts of it. Like the frequency of the shift that causes the shift has to come in gradually, right? And so it came in before the fall equinox, so that's September 22nd, and then everything post September 22nd is basically the frequency has settled, like the frequency range has dropped in, or we have dropped into the frequency actually. Um, and then everything post that is basically us adjusting to it, or us acclimating to the new frequency. And so, I read this many places, but I also agree that we're basically going through several like mini shifts in order to
Mini
have
multiple or mini small or multiple small.
uh I don't know about the size of them, but there are multiple in order to allow us to acclimate easier, as opposed to just going through a huge
One big shift.
one big shift. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like as Earth progresses together, as the entire solar system kind of progresses, and it was then in cyclical nature. I heard other people say this, that like there are there are like bubbles in space, but let's just, I don't know why they're called bubbles. I wouldn't call them bubbles, but there are areas in space, right, where this is just the energetic trajectory is X, let's say, but in order to get there, you kind of like um, gradually ease into it, right?
The- I would never be able to find it, but we saw a a some probably on Gaia. That was talking about when the magnetic poles of the Earth shift. Like currently the North Pole's at the North Pole, and the South Pole's at South Pole and Antarctica, but it hasn't always been that way. And every so often it shifts, and the every so often is not like a set, X thousand years. It's it's a weird thing, but some people have discovered the or have narrowed down a pattern, and the pattern looks like, imagine the Earth is going through some sort of 3D grid, right? And every time it passes a grid against this plane, like like a horizontal line, there's a shift. And every time it passes one of these vertical lines, there's another shift. And so it's like when it goes through this, the rate there's almost like two or three different uh
Possibilities of shifts, like
yeah,
why
like
or why the shift.
barriers, two or three different barriers, and every barrier
Mm-hmm.
it does another shift. So that's why it's not the pattern of when it shifts is not obvious.
Consistent.
If it was every 100,000 years it shifts, so that would make sense, I guess. But it isn't. It's a weird pattern. Um, which what would there be in space that is 100,000 years worth of traveling through or whatever? It's a long time. I don't know. But it was an interesting. It
Yeah.
the way it was explained, the math made sense to me. So
Yeah, I don't know why, and you might be able to explain it since you're a little bit more astronomically adapt, I guess. But
Oh, astronomically inclined would be good pun.
mm,
Inclination.
see. Um, and so like the nature of our solar system, right, is that we're spinning around our sun, right? And then, but then the a lot of people say that like that, you guys on Instagram, I see these diagrams all the time that our solar system is that even though we're spinning around our sun, we're actually in this trajectory of forward itself, right? The entire system is actually moving
Right.
like this through it.
Through around the galaxy.
Yeah, around the galaxy.
And the galaxy itself is boogieing on through space itself too.
Yeah, but so the shift that I think you're talking about is correlated to the yugas, the ancient yugas of Indian teachings. And our moving through our galaxy is a orbital, very large orbital
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, but it's like was it 250,000 years, something like that? It's a long time.
Yeah, but I think they're tied to the yugas. I say that no, I'm not saying to the exact regiment of the yuga switches.
But the yugas made up a 26,000 year cycle, just like the
Our
our
procession.
precession. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but so there's a shift that happens through that orientation within our solar system, but then there's a larger shift that happens within the where we are in our galactic plane.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So not only is there Earth tilt pivot, not is there only like our position relative to other planets, and then there's our position as the entire solar system relative to our placement in the
Yeah.
galaxy.
There are actually three different things that change the dynamics here. There's the precession, which is, where the North Star is pointed. The actual angle of the Earth currently it's like 22.5 degrees or whatever changes. So the precession is like a 26,000 year cycle. The tiltiness is like a 40,000 year cycle. And then there's the eccentricity, the orbit is like a 100,000 year cycle. And sometimes it's more circular and sometimes it's more ovular. Ovular?
Eccentricity of Earth's orbit.
Yes.
Okay.
And, when the Earth gets really non-circular in its orbit, we get some cold times. And when if it shifts a certain way, if the poles shift more toward the sun or away from the sun, that can all these things can dramatically. That's basically what causes is the periodic ice ages, the interplay of those three long cycles.
Yeah. Yeah, but realistically, we need to look outside of Earth. Like we need to look at our solar
Yeah,
system cycle.
but there are a lot of there's a lot of cycles, and the interaction between those cycles is
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah, yeah. But on the greater Earth interpretation of its cycle, right? Our positioning relative to where our solar system is on our galactic plane is actually what's affecting this current change, like this shift that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and imagine a big potted bowl of cereal, got a whole bunch of Cheerios in there, and get them all swirling around. They don't. It's not like they're not fixed like a. I'm gonna say record that would really date me. Some sort of flat fixed thing where they're all you know relative to no matter rotate that around one time and everything looks exactly like it used to look. No, they're all swirling around at their own rates. So we're getting closer to some stars, further from some stars. It's all
Yeah.
the big soup up there.
Yeah. And then, the I got the whole message in December that we were the furthest away from Haley's comet too.
Mhm.
That's somehow relative. I don't know. Like you would think that wouldn't have much sway, but somehow it's related. Yeah, and so like the shift that we went through is basically like this passage that our entire solar system is passing through. Um there you go. The thing that somebody related to this is, do you remember how back maybe last year it was that they like NASA said that they had a huge warming of Neptune. It was Neptune. They're like the Neptune southern pole of Neptune had a huge temperature spike.
I remember.
Yeah, and there was like, they were just talking about how like temperature just increased by some huge anomaly. But so our entire solar system experiencing the shift as the solar system is progressing through our, within the circular notion of our galaxy. And so yeah, so we have entered, we have like met it, and it's in us, or like we're in it. And now we're progressing into this new pattern, right? Like so it's almost like that veil, I guess one of the veils, right? I think there's multiple veils. We see it as one veil, but there's a veil. And then we pass through a veil, and then now we're just acclimating to how that veil looks on the other
Mhm.
side. And it's starting to look really strange.
Yeah.
Like structures are, nimble and
D-
falling apart.
Destructuring.
Destructuring. Yeah, that's something that I've noticed is we're destructuring.
Did you want to go into any specific details of anything, or
My birthday.
or sure, if you brought it up, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or or does it even matter? It's
It
it.
doesn't matter, but I can say that, so basically, as we progress, right, the directive that I'm getting is just start shedding density. Like everything you do needs to be with a thought process of what does density shedding look like, right? And there's not, like, I don't know if I said this before or not, but they have always kind of been reminding me, there's not like a wrong way to shed density. Like there's multitude of ways. Did I say that on a previous podcast?
I don't know.
Uh,
I always thought there was a wrong way to do it
what?
with drugs and alcohol.
Oh, shut up. No, that's just denial. But if you are shedding density, right? So basically, your body will naturally, I don't know if you're noticing or not, will want to just start like releasing, like drama is one of the densities, right? Judgment is one of the densities. Anger is one of the densities. And then like just even physicality, you will like almost feel like you have ants in your pants, right? Like to where like you just need to shake it off, right? Like you will,
Yeah, they're like a, I don't know what the word is for restless leg syndrome over your whole body.
yeah, like your entire system will just want to go, oh, I just need to, whoa.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've noticed that a lot lately, and sometimes I'm like, all right, I'll just do it, and sometimes I'm like, well, how much of this is my monkey mind just not letting me be still? Like, I've no the first time I noticed this was when we did ayahuasca, but like, I can sit here and I'm like, okay, all right, this I'm slightly uncomfortable. I need to adjust. I actually do need to adjust the where where my shirt is. Okay, that's fine. And then it's like, all right, now there's an itch. There's always, and like I'll be laying there. I'm like, right now I know exactly what it is that's bothering me, but I can't picture what the next thing is. I know as soon as I take care of this itch, there'll be something else. And I'm scanning my whole body. I'm like, where's it gonna be? And then so I scratch my itch, and then like 5 seconds later, it's like, oh I need to move my leg because it's just uncomfortable. It's really interesting that that's been happening a lot. And it's like I'm like, I can play this game all day. I can keep scratch. That's actually cat hair. I can keep scratching my nose and itching my leg and moving my foot all day long. Or I can just go, well, I could do this all day long, and instead I'm just going to, accept whatever discomfort there is, and okay,
Yeah, but think about, you can actually adjust, you can address it. Let's say if it's artificial and your mind is trying to just pivot away from what's actually coming through, right?
I think it is some sort of like
Pivot away.
it's some sort of like attention distraction thing.
Yeah. I mean, that it could be that. I mean, if that, you need to acknowledge that.
Yeah,
Like it's just if your mind is trying to distract you from what's actually at the surface
I
coming
think
up
I think
within
that I
you.
think that's what it is.
And then you've obviously, just going back to that rhetoric, that if you have been trying to escape from processing things and keeping them in boxes and separated for so long, that's what is happening, is those boxes are opening because the structure that was perceived to be holding them together, was never actually structure, right? But you were able to have the density lock them apart. But now, because density is different, there's no such thing as a part. Everything is like just prying itself open, right? Quite literally cracking itself open. So more things will be coming up, right? In one, you can address them mentally, I guess. You can, you can logically go, okay, what is it actually that is bothering me? Like if this is an itch, then what is behind this itch, right? What is behind this discomfort? And then process it and let it go that way. Or you can, or at the same time, you can cognitively go, okay, what if I don't define it and I go into the abstract version thereof, right? Like what it, on the whole, right? It's discomfort, right? But what is discomfort? Like stuck energy around something. And so just like you can go into the pain body of, like my childhood trauma, right? I can go to that and I can dive in deep and that can be this whole thing. And like I can shed the root origin of that thing. Or I can go up and I can go, oh, look, it is the triangulation of the victim empire and the resistance, right? And it's the same concept, but I'm overlooking it from this generalized earth blueprint as opposed to like, oh, this is the individualized interpretation of that blueprint, right?
Mm.
And if you look at it from the higher up from the triangulation standpoint, the shakes we do in Qigong, or like, remember when Aiden came there and I said, just like shake it off, right? Um, like that.
A
You
deer,
quite literally just
a deer will do that if it escapes from a predator. Uh, it will
or get startled by a
or get
car,
startled. It's got all that
adrenaline.
adrenaline at the physical level, but emotionally, that's not great
But just
to be
stuck
scared like that,
trauma.
and it will
Yeah.
literally shake it out in order to move on. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if you don't shake it out, it sets in.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so if you can address it from the standpoint of like, okay, here's what individualized, oh, this is me feeling unfree, right? And then with that lack of freedom, like look at all the tension I have, right? And you can like, consciously go, okay, well, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna allow myself to feel that feeling of being trapped. What does it feel like to be trapped, right? And then you allow it to come to the surface and allow it to bloom out and just naturally open, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, there's this whole thing. Um, you can do that, or you can go, okay, on the whole, what is feeling trapped? Victim, right? So we're again playing a victim game. And if you go that high up, you can just do like a shake off.
Mm,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Like there's two ways to do it.
yeah,
Uh, there's multiple ways to do it. What I'm saying is, but you could do it on the individualized micro interpretation, or you can do on the macro interpretation of what version of victimhood am I in right now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so yeah, what happened with me, I guess what is the the thing that came up for my birthday was basically kind of like the root. I'm not going to go into details, but like just an overview of everything that is the victim mindset that I wasn't allowing myself to acknowledge. I think that's what it was, right? Like I wasn't allowing myself to feel the depth of victimhood uh, that I actually felt. So in the
And
choice
have always felt.
have always felt, and in the choice of not acknowledging that I felt like a victim and how much pain I allowed myself to hold on to, right?
Mm,
So it's kind of weird. It's like, if you ask me before my birthday, like, oh, how much are you walking in the mindset of a victim, right? I would say, oh, not much. I've been doing, I've been
been
doing,
shaking it out.
I've been shaking it out for the last 3 or 4 years. So surely not much. But no, it was a lot. And I think it was kind of like the depth, the lock. And I think it was, I will say this in case somebody can relate or somebody needs this. The idea that you are or are not victim, right? And how much pain that causes you. If that is not acknowledged, and that if that is not, if you're not allowing yourself to feel the pain that you have been trying to suppress all your life, which I think that's what it came down to. Like I was not allowing myself to feel how painful that was.
Yeah,
um like the holding on unto an unacknowledgement of the pain basically caused a huge energetic density for me. And so over the weekend, I guess on the Sunday, it on the winter or so wait, fall equinox, I usually get a gift for my birthday, and it's I hate to say it, it's never great. I mean, it's never great on the surface, right? Like, it's like, like going into your birthday, you're like, would you like to experience this gift? And you would always go, no, no, just pick a different day. But it's always on my birthday. And so yeah, once again on my birthday, I get this gift, and it was just the most intense release. It was the most immense amount of pain. Like I told you, like when I was going through it, and it continued to float for like,
It was a good while, several days.
yeah, it was two or 3 days afterwards, probably two for sure. That I was like, oh my gosh, and especially that night, it was just so overwhelming. The amount of pain that I allowed myself to feel. Like, but but in that survival mindset, I think what happened with me, because I grew up in the country where allowing yourself to feel the depth of pain was not an option. I didn't, and so then Sunday I did,
Mm.
and it was just a lot. Anyway, and so from the shedding, so you will have these momentous unlocks. Some of them are huge, right? And some of them will just be minor, but you will just intuitively be guided to shed off more and more density as we adjust into this new shift before the next one comes.
When do you think the next one's coming? Solstice?
No, probably next summer. Okay, so we have some grace. Because they're difficult, right? They're difficult because it's the density has to unravel, and it has to reswizzle itself into its new platform of normal, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But with that, things have to dissolve. Like things would just have to fall apart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so instead of just falling apart all at once, we're having this, grace of time, where we're being allowed to gradually incorporate ourselves into the new shift. Yeah, and so whatever structures we have right now, and it's interesting. I don't want to go into the political situation, but we're getting ready to go into political shift, and so structures will have to disassemble, not because they have to, just because quite literally by the mere nature of where our solar system is located on our galactic plane, then that type of density just cannot be held, and so thus we have to interpret new density, and new density has our new way of understanding of how the world works. And so through that thought process of understanding, you would go, wait, this doesn't even make sense, because all of
Right.
a sudden your idea of how the world works is just vastly different. And what I will point out is that can be very unsettling to begin with, because you're like, wait, why all of a sudden do I think that this is not how things work?
Right.
Like if for those of us who are older, in a time and space continuum, and have been used to Earth being a certain way, we would go, that's strange. Like it doesn't seem to make sense, but yet I know we have been doing this for quite some time now.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that used to resonate may not resonate anymore.
For the population who's is accustomed to the density where it did make sense, you would be slightly go, oh, that's strange. Even I don't think that works.
Yeah.
I say this in the positive light, but then I want to go dot 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 parenthesis. There's that other group of people who will not be able to do that, and
Right.
so
Where
the
it has
exit
it has
strategy.
it has calcified for
Yeah,
them.
yeah, and so maybe that's what the vision was: is the people who it calcified for, and then there's not like this like, well, there will be a huge number of exit points right now.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, I don't know, people are either getting calmer or less calm. Like more agitated, more anxious, more worked up, or less. It's I don't know. I don't know if anybody's staying the same. Feels like they're being pulled in one direction or the other.
Yeah,
And maybe both at the same time. Because
yeah.
I can relate, I've been both calmer and more anxious, not simultaneously, but back and forth
Mhm, mhm.
in the last
Yeah,
few days.
yeah,
It's
that thing
like
is
it's like
it's
the
shaking itself
the
apart.
the monkey mind is either on at 110% or it's off at 0
Mhm.
right now, and it just keeps going back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah. Well, when you dive into your monkey mind, that right, that's the opportunity to see that you're trying to dive back into
Yeah, no,
density.
it's really apparent, but at the same time, it's like sometimes it's really hard to turn off.
Yeah, but there you go. If you don't want to dive into like, if you don't have time to sit there and go into deep meditation and then like actually allow to flow what is actually behind the monkey mind, because the monkey mind is not it, right? There's something's coming up
It's a symptom.
energetically.
Yeah.
It's a symptom of something big coming up. So option one is sit down, take time, and then go into that meditative state in order to feel like, just like
Yeah.
we've been talking about for the last year, and just allow the letting go process happen. Like go deep within yourself and go, okay, if it's not monkey mind, what am I worried about? And then go into the why and why and why and why, and then reach that center point of like, oh, okay, look, I'm feeling trapped. Or like,
Mhm.
let's be honest, right now, I think is going to happen is, oh, I'm feeling uncertain and I'm being triggered by the unknown of the uncertainty. Most of them would be that.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a lot more uncertainty in the 3D world, at least.
Well, yeah, but the
Which
uncertainty is because the system has to be readjusted. But in the meantime, you know that it will not hold structure. And so you know that things will fall apart. But then our human mind, let's be honest, is still like in its childlike mode to where for us, a known structure no longer being there, even if deep down we admit that we don't want that structure to be there, is scary. Like we're
right.
children at the core.
Yeah, I mean the unknown is scary. Even if the known is scary, the unknown is still scary. Taking away the scary known is still scary.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's scary in a different way. It's scary in an unpredictable way, which makes it even scarier.
Yeah. So we're just triggered by the fact that like, oh look, it's probably gonna go somewhere where it's very unknown. And then just like facing the thought of being okay with unknown is scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surrender, pure surrender, right? That's what we're basically being asked to surrender, um, really surrender. And that is, I specialize in having that as my primary difficulty. And so yeah, so that completely open aspect of to like openness and vulnerability into the space, because that's what this is, right? Like we're not familiar with this space. Like the going back to that thing that I mentioned before, that they said that you're not from the point A going to the point B. You have left this this plane of existence, and you're over there on point C, in a new wonderland, and things are just new. Like right, think about it, if you're you know if you have been accustomed living on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Then going from Detroit to Chicago, you're like, okay, it's different, but guess what? We still have 7-Elevens and there's still gas stations and there's still Kroger's and there's still school systems. And like, I know the pattern,
Yeah.
right? And like, to me, it's like, you would think, okay, well, it's a little bit of a bigger shock to move from United States into Egypt, right? Like that would
Sure.
be more difficult of a thing
Yeah,
to get
but
used to.
it's a culture shock. It's not like a
Well, things are different, regardless of
yeah.
the culture. Things are different.
I mean, I say culture shock, not just culture. I mean, I wrap it all under culture shock. This is a
What's happening?
I'm not sure. This is above and beyond any sort of like culture and language. It's just really different over there. Like
Yeah, but it's still
it
Earth, right?
looks
There's still
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah,
humans.
yeah.
There's still food to eat. There's still
It'll be a
concept
little
of gas
weird, but
station.
it's not.
You know,
But you could manage.
do you know what I mean? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's an acclimation process, but like
Imagine being popped in the middle of the jungle with nobody there.
I was gonna say, just imagine,
What's going on here?
moving to the Pleiadian star system.
Yeah, that's not Detroit.
It's not Detroit. Why do I specifically Detroit?
I don't know. That was the first one you mentioned.
um.
Not in Kansas anymore.
So right. So I want to say, trajectory wise, that is what is happening to us. We're going from Earth to Pleiades, right? But realistically speaking, we're taking a very, very long time to get there. And so we will go through Egypt and we will go through the jungle and then we will go through like
Detroit.
glowing jungle. Well, I guess my origin point was Detroit for some reason.
Yeah. It's Kansas.
but you know what I mean? There would be these incremental shifts to where you're like, okay, well, that's different. So that's what I was saying. The grace is there to allow us to transition from Earth to Pleiades through series of like, wait, that's weird. Right.
Right.
But sooner or later, and this is where we are, sooner or later, like the concepts of like, wait, what, this is how Earth works. That's where we are. We're kind of like leaving that like at the core, the most rudimentary understanding of Earth workings. Do you know what I mean? If we're on the trajectory from the Earth to Pleiades, right? Like we're leaving the orbital structure of Earth and we're like, oh, okay, well, things are different out there, right? Like when you get to the space stations, like, okay, things don't work the same way. So
Yeah.
conceptually, what I'm trying to say is that is how we are. We're like, oh, all of a sudden, even though we have been going through all these shifts to where we went from Detroit to Egypt to the jungle, now we're like, oh, this is beyond the jungle.
After the jungle is the space station, and that's as different as the jungle is from Detroit. Space station's really different.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like conceptually, that's kind of how you can see this.
At least you had gravity in the jungle.
Sure. Right. Like gravity's there and like here's the laws of physics and they work this way. Right. But I want to say, this is what I want to point out. We are perceiving things to be vastly different. Right. And so to us, like everything is changing. But what I want to point out is we're just starting to remember how things were or how we used to interact with things. And we're on the next reiteration cycle of that.
We've just come full circle.
Yeah. Right. So for those of us who are meant to stay here through this experience and then thus interpret this new experience and this new shift, have been in that experience already. That is something that I want to point out that that I think will come along with one of these podcasts together with my channel messages. They're like, you have been here. This is something that is already within your memory. It's already within memory of planet Earth. And so like the structure and the memory and the blueprint of that is already there. So you're not actually, to us, it's all new and it's rainbows and butterflies, if you want it to be. But in truth is we have played on this exact version of a playground before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything's a cycle. Everything's a loop.
Yeah, but for us, right?
Yeah.
We are, like we're just on a reiteration of that new interpretation of experience of it. And in this case, as an earthen on Earth. Right. And so like, which is super exciting if you think about it, like for an earthen to go into like this idea where like, wait, gravity does what?
Earthling?
Yeah.
Oh.
Whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's because it is, we've had the last however many 1,000 years, allegedly stuck to gravity stuck to Earth without any experience of anything else. It's,
So yeah, to us it's super exciting to go through this idea of like, oh my gosh, look, here's how things were and here's things now. And that's like crazy different.
Right.
So that idea in the net, like think about how much excitement that would raise within your experience of life if you will get to experience for the first time discovery of gravitational shifts, right? Or like
right, but
like working with gravity and canceling gravity and
I mean, but at the same time we're kind of inched along into it.
Yeah, now we can see it happened, but that huge shift of like, oh, here's how I grew up, right? Like back in the olden days, whenever you used to talk to like my grandma, right? I could talk to her about a time where there was no such thing as telephones. Wait, could I? I think so. For sure my grandma, right? Like for sure my grandma grew up in the time frame where there was no such thing as a telephone where you could like pick up a telephone, as it were, and call someone far away, let's say. But do you know what I mean?
Long distance.
Long distance. Whatever the wires at the time extended to, right? That's, let's be honest, that's what it was to begin with, right? Like you literally needed physical wires in order to extend the
Wires. Those were the days.
right? But you could talk to someone who did not experience that and then went through that like evolutionary jump of like this conceptual understanding of perception of voice movement through time and space outside of you having to walk 1,000 miles to talk to Bob.
I mean, we predate the internet, or at least the internet as we know it.
Sure.
And
Yeah, right.
our Aiden was born, months before the original iPhone was announced. So he's essentially an iPhone generation. And of course, Annabelle never not had access to one. It's just like, the idea that, I have this magic rectangle that contains the sum of all recorded human knowledge. Go back to when we were that age. It's like, what? That's insane. What?
Right.
It's just bonkers.
Yeah, right. But to us, like we kind of eased into it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we got to ease into it.
But there's that excitement, the initial implementation of this vast technology where you get excited about that switch.
I mean, I remember, because I like computers and technology. I remember every little step of the way, which is kind of marked by, the new
iPhone.
Not the new. Well, back then it was the new computer or the new modem or the whatever.
Oh, okay.
And now it's fast. Now the faster modem, so I can download stuff faster and whatever. And it's. I mean, it was really exciting to live through those times.
Yeah.
Because it was like that was not everybody was doing that. It was like pioneer type stuff.
Oh, is that why it's exciting? Because it's pioneer.
Well, it was exciting because it was new, and it was I had it was a bit escapist, being completely honest, because it's like this is my world. There's the world out there, which is running amok, and I don't have any control over it.
Yeah.
But this is my world where I do have control over it, and I can program it to do whatever I want. And I have my friends online who I've never met, and that's a thing now. I mean, back then I have friends that I've never met.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's just,
Yeah. I guess I was probably one of the first generations to have friends that I've never met.
That can have all kinds of meanings.
Yeah. I mean, now, Aiden has, dozens of good friends that he talks to frequently that, he either hasn't met or only recently met. And that's just like, oh yeah, that's, there's, Bill from Europe and, Joe from wherever. And
yeah.
that's just, that's just normal.
Yeah, but think about it. We're slow. So I will say this. We need that gradual introduction to what it is like to interface with consciousness outside of perceived physicality, right? And so to begin with, we're giving Morse code, right? Is that the rudimentary interface, long distance interface
on a telegraph? Yeah.
Yeah, right. So we're Morse coding ourselves on interface with like what is one consciousness way to interface with a different consciousness in the physical form, right? Now I say this, go back, we used to interface how we're getting ready to interface, but we used to, our long distance interface in our physical form was literally tap 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 or whatever. Yeah, right. I remember, for some reason, telegrams and going to a telegram station in Ukraine. I'll have to double check this with my parents.
Yeah.
And you could get a telegram.
I think it was Western Union only, I say recently, it's probably been 10 years now, stopped doing telegrams. You could, like, up until the middle 2000s or so, maybe even 2010, you could order a telegram. And I think they would go deliver to your door or something. And I'm like, damn, if I had known they were going away, I would have ordered one just for the novelty of it.
Yeah, no, it was like this little building, and then, they had those little windows, almost like a teller back in the day, like,
Bank
how
teller?
bank tellers used to have, like, tiny little windows, or like a train station, olden train stations used to have
Yeah.
tiny little windows, or even, like, at the post office, it was a tiny little window, and it was like that, and then, I guess you could go there and you could receive your telegram, and I wanna say this would have been early '80s. I wanna say I have a memory of getting a telegram.
That's cool.
Which is, like,
I never got a telegram.
so strange. Didn't, but it was from my
Yeah.
parents. I was just there as a child. But I thought, "Wait, what?" But think about it, their interface of human interaction in that case is literally, dots and stakes.
I assume that there's some sort of Morse code in Cyrillic.
Yeah, probably, I'm assuming. I think well, I mean, wouldn't the SOS and, like, most of the Morse code probably be worldwide compliant in order to be able to communicate?
It's the English letters, all 26 letters and numbers is the Morse code. And there may be like a
Yeah, but how would
stop or
different
something.
countries interact with each other back in the olden days? Like, SOS, I think, was a standard for all of
SOS
us.
is a standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, so what I was trying to say is, think about the interface. We go from the Morse code, right?
So we go like smoke signals before that.
Yeah, sure. There you go, right? Yeah, but, that's still, like, physical space interpretation, like,
Sure.
you're visually connecting to the image, right? To then telephone, right? I might miss a couple of steps. To then, like, internet, right? And then, now the idea of internet has all these reiteration thereof of, like, what it means for the internet, right? The internet was the dial up, right? Or they literally had the whatever.
Oh yeah. Those, the good old days.
Right. And now it's just like, wait, what? You have to dial into the
I
internet.
I just heard that that it is possible to do that over like a VoIP, like a
Voice over
voice
IP.
yeah,
Yeah, but
or over Skype or something.
that was the thing. Voice over IP. It was
That
like,
was the thing.
whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that's something, right? And so now we're entering into this idea of, like, quantum message delivery, right? But, like, we're trying to take the size of information, right? And we're trying to suppress a large chunks of it into finite space-time bubbles, let's say, and then transmit them, and then having be held, right? But, like, think about it on the etheric level, right? Like, we're currently we are still using it into the physical implementation thereof, correct? But, like, sooner or later, when we reference to the idea of the cloud, well, we know the clouds is a bunch of hard drives somewhere, right? But sooner or later, we'll realize, like, wait, but we're physically holding hard drives, but what would it mean for the structure to be held in time and space because it holds density and just sit there as an interface without, wires and
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Right. Right. Right.
No, but that's the next iteration, and
Yeah.
that's the iteration we're entering into right now.
Right.
Is
It's like we in this 3D world, the best we can do is wire a bunch of transistors and stuff together and kind of make it
Yeah.
instead of, conceiving of something that exists beyond that.
No, but see, think about this. Transitory, we need to have the human interface have a logical interpretation of transitional phase, right? And so the transitional phase that we're implementing, even though physically we're still delivering a physical object that has a physical mechanical binary functionality, we're already calling it something that is of the futuristic way of being, which is cloud. You're storing it in the cloud. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So we're already preparing the switch in technology into the human psyche by calling it in the cloud. You know,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The Marcel Vogel's study of crystals and, like, depositing information into crystals and then storing it and then
Mhm.
retracting it and basically having crystal as a form of a database, I guess, or yeah, hard drive, database, hard drive, whatever, same thing. Hard drive and database all in one. Maybe is that right?
right. And he's a smart cookie. He basically invented LCD, which is almost every screen uses. And then he spinning hard drives. Did he invent those too?
I mean, he has like 200 patents or something.
It was like
That
there was like
without his inventions,
there
we
was like
wouldn't
all
have
kinds of
like
stuff. It's like, oh, we still use that,
plasma. Yeah. Oh yeah,
or the
LCD
direct
plasma.
descendant of that to this day. It's like
Yeah.
your television, your maybe not the latest iPhone, but the iPhone from just even a couple years
I
ago
mean,
is
computer screens, just
computer screens.
pixels.
Yeah,
What the pixels are.
yeah, almost every laptop screen.
Yeah.
And then all the not SSDs, but the old spinning hard drives. That's wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But
That's decades of use that he he
yeah.
pioneered. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, but later he went into
What Wikipedia calls the esoteric.
they call him esoteric. He was a scientist who worked for IBM for like 30 or 40 years, and he retired from IBM. And then like after he retired, he went like, heck, what the heck am I gonna do? Actually, no, I think IBM asked him if he wanted to teach anything, if he wanted um, to like take on, um, like some sort of class, or like just how does this knowledge get expanded,
Mhm.
right? Um, I think this is what the important thing that we are having to realize right now, or face right now, is we need a civilization, or we need group of kids who are open-minded to a concept outside of old structures, right? Like take this concept and think about it, like all the amazing inventions that are being done by kids. They're completely off base of like, wait, what? Like that's not even like that wasn't even imaginable by
It's
adults.
not
Adult could
yeah.
not even
It's
imagine
not a
this.
better mousetrap.
Yeah, right. And so his thought process in teaching those classes was to take an idea that it was to teach the new generation to think outside of the box of the old narrative, right? Just like what he invented was, his entire career at IBM.
Revolutionary.
Yeah, yeah, sure, revolutionary. Like you don't build on to the old concept. You basically go, well, what would be the new way to interpret that, right? And based on the cyclical nature of the progression of Earth through in our solar system, through our galaxy, we are, you know, people refer to them as quantum leaps. You like go that idea of like, oh wait, why do we used to do things this way? That doesn't even make sense. To like, oh wait, here's this whole like, wait, what other concept? And so his idea of taking and studying the crystalline structure, and then applying it as a storage solution, um, is esoteric to us right now, let's say. But in fact, that was the case back, you know, before, when Sumerians were here. I will use word the earth can relate to. When the Sumerians were here, and when the Egyptian cultures were at its peak of,
Or Atlantis.
technological development. Oh yeah, definitely Atlantis. And then all the other cultures out there.
Right.
That's just what they do. Like they use crystalline structure to store, transmit, and then thus transmit data packets.
Right. I mean, imagine in any sort of even in the movies, if when quote aliens are portrayed, it's not like
Yeah.
it's a spaceship full of what we would look at and go technology. It's something very different. Maybe it's not like you imagine you could imagine a spaceship that's flown with like a joystick or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or submarine.
Or
Too soon?
that wasn't even a joystick. That was a game controller.
That's worse.
I don't know who sent a little robot down and they found the wreckage at the bottom.
Yeah, that's not
Lots
cool.
of it. But it's like you don't imagine the aliens flying with joysticks and
Yeah.
buttons and
No, they're
set a course.
they're interfacing with
It's
their DNA.
either like it's not pushing buttons. It's either like some sort of like I don't know how to describe that, or it's telepathic, or it's intention based, or maybe it's some sort of AI thing. But whatever it is, it doesn't look like what we have. It doesn't look like anything we could conceive of. It's something
Not yet.
wildly different.
I think one, we have it, right? But then two, currently
It's not like anything we're familiar with. How about that?
Well, I guess I would agree with this point, but all the old Star Trek shows and like Stargate shows and Star Wars shows, right? Well, Star Wars was still buttons. There was lots of buttons. I remember lots of buttons. But Star Trek and Star Wars, no, wait, not Star Wars. Star Trek and Stargate, right? They were kind of like almost like disclosure type of a shows that showcase to us these concepts of like futuristic realities, futuristic worlds. To some extent, back in the olden days, I think everybody actually thought that in the 50s, everybody thought that come 80s, we will have flying cars. Like, there was zero amount of chance that we saw the future not go there. Like, think about that.
I mean, Back to the Future, which takes place in this is Back to the Future 2. Takes place in late 80s. They go to 2005 or 2015, I forget.
Yeah.
Either way, there's flying cars and Mr. Fusion on the back of your car. And, we kind of missed that one. And the hoverboards. Yeah, unfortunately, the 2024 looks an awful lot like 1985 as far as cars go.
Yeah, there has been this suppression in technological release. I don't know why.
I was going to say that, like, go back 300 years, and what does it look like to get across the sea? It looks like there's a big ship's steering wheel. I don't know what they're called. The steering wheels have those spokes on them, captain's wheel.
Yeah.
That's your interface. That and telling your mateys to go rig the mainsail. I don't know. I don't know what to say. That's what transportation looks like. And now it's buttons and joysticks, right? Maybe
I mean, in the air.
Maybe ships still have steering wheels, but they're you don't need to rig the mainsail.
Yeah, but think about the idea of flight was not even an option.
Oh yeah,
right. So like right now, like, wait, why would I take a ship if I could just fly across the ocean and that takes me like 5 hours?
Maybe planes still have. Maybe there are still joysticks.
No, but the concept between the ship as the only way for me to get across the ocean to like now, like, why would I take a ship? That seems silly. Like, that's like some sort of like, ancient experience that I would want to participate in, and not,
That's like, ooh, I'm gonna take a cargo ship and have fun with the crew for 2 months on my ship traveling over to China. It's like a hipster thing to do.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. That sounds kind of. It does sound kind of fun.
Yeah, but
in
it's
a way.
An experience as opposed to like this is how we interface with the world.
It's like back in the day, you walked to where you needed to go because you had to, and now you walk for the fun of it, for the experience of it.
Yeah.
Famously in Back to the Future 3, when Doc Brown went back to 1885 or whenever it was, he gets drunk and he's telling people about the future, which he knows he shouldn't do. He's like, "And the future." It's my Christopher Lloyd voice.
Is Christopher Lloyd still alive or not?
We'll have, I think so.
He's still alive.
We'll have automobiles that will, that are faster than the fastest horses, and people, people will run not because they need to, but just for the fun of it. And everyone thinks he's crazy, of course, because best thing you have is a horse right now. Yeah, sure enough, we walk and run because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah, but so
whatever that
that net difference,
that difference, and just keep doing it in the future.
Yeah,
it's gonna be crazy. It'll be unrecognizable to people today.
Unrecognizable, but like exciting.
Yeah.
One is exciting, right? That revolutionary change, or like the net potential of it being different
Right.
on the most
And
exciting and then useful level
we're talking about,
is our future, right?
we've mentioned technology, but this is above and beyond just stuff.
Yeah,
I
like
mean, stuff is part of it,
healing, right?
but yeah,
Like
yeah,
the idea behind healing will get completely revolutionized. What we interpret medicine and healing in that same dimensional physicality as we interpret computers, right? Like right now, I know we want to use fancy words such as like we hold data in the cloud, but the truth is we still have a chunk of electronic components
yeah,
holding that data. Medicine or healing is kind of going to go through that same shift, just like the computers, right? We will be holding data in the cloud. Uh, you know, cloud is an esoteric. I will not use cloud as a physical term, right? But the esoteric idea of what it is to
yeah,
hold data in the cloud. Medicine will basically be that,
yeah,
to where we will not be interpreting medical healing as a physicality, like, oh, literally swallow this thing, right? And then this thing then does something to your body. We will start interpreting things from what they are and not actually what we perceive them to be.
right. There's a handful of people, a lot of whom are actual bona fide MDs who, Zach Bush is one of them.
Mhm.
He was an MD for, he still is an MD, but he was a practicing what we would call a normal doctor for many years, and eventually he's like, "We're doing this all wrong." There's like acute things like you broke your arm and then you got to fix it up, and then there's like the chronic things, which honestly are the more serious ones most of the time that affect us, and we as society don't seem to properly understand the causes of these and or how to treat them properly other than with, well, this pill seems to maybe sometimes help, so we'll just give this to everybody
Yeah.
with but there's now that has side effects and you have to have this other pill to counter the side effects. And
Yeah, but right from the beginning, it's like I will every single time I say that, I'm like, oh, people are gonna flip the fuck out. But it's so simple. The acute things stem from prolonged holding of density.
the chronic things,
Yeah,
yeah,
the chronic things, right? So if you have this thing that comes on over time, it is because you held on to density and you allowed the density to
yeah,
accumulate.
yeah,
And so from that standpoint, you will not, if you go into that understanding, just like, oh, hey, how do I get sick to the point where it becomes really bad? And you go, oh, well, guess what? It's because I don't interface with my flow of energy. And then if it gets trapped somewhere, like it just sits.
yeah,
That won't even be an option.
right. I mean, stress is the most obvious and easy example of that. Is that
Yeah, prolonged stress.
prolonged stress? It causes all kinds of crap.
Yeah, but that not addressing of the actual feeling that you have at the moment, not addressing of what you actually feel right now at the moment, how much worry you have about the past, how much worry you have about the future, that that functioning, that blindness of your energetic self, right? It just drives these like silly, what would be the most polite word to use? Childlike behaviors of not treating your body as a system that can like take on and let go of things. Do
Hmm.
you know what I mean? If
Yeah,
you perceive your body as something that, oh, well, here's the flow and this is me. And then if something comes in, then it like deposits itself into where it used to do this, but now it has to do this, right? And so like the
yeah,
second you introduce that little thing in, guess what? This is already an interruption in an overall flow.
yeah,
And the second you see that thing causing your system to do this, you'll go, oh, that doesn't seem right. Let me go ahead and remove that. So there's no chronic of anything because you're addressing everything with this understanding of this is what the system is. And unless you're doing this and then you feel your body being able to do this, it would be very obvious if you pipe yourself in to go, wait, all of a sudden, like between yesterday and today, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And wait, where's that thing?
I wonder if that could have anything to do with, that conversation with Bill in the office that I'm still thinking about.
Yes, but that's it. That is the rudimentary understanding that we need to switch that, hey, my body is meant to do this. And then if it doesn't, then wait, something there.
Right. I mean, I guess there are like environmental things. If you go, get a couple lungfuls of pure radon or asbestos, something that probably isn't, that could do some damage.
Yes, but again, you can see that factor. You can see it coming in if it isn't, in fact, environmental and it has nothing to do with your personal stress level, right? Then it present itself the same way. It would present itself as this little
and
pin.
You should be able to ideally notice that, oh, something's wrong.
Yeah, you'll be able to go, oh, look, the only thing you need to know is if this is the flow, if this is the energetic flow of the entire system, and whether through personal blindness to stress or whether through interaction with a substance that caused, this pin to come in, is today, like, if twice a day you take a reading, right? You take a reading in the morning and you take a reading in the afternoon. If at any point it's not doing this and is starting to do this, right, then you would automatically address that. You would automatically choose to recalibrate whatever that either outside environmental factor or the internal thought factor that causes the spin.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we're not then suffering from systematic, what's the word they used?
Endemic disease.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Where like all of a sudden diabetes is the thing.
Right. I mean,
heart disease
diabetes,
is the thing.
heart disease, cancer, these are all very modern diseases. That's not saying that nobody died in the 800s from these things, but it wasn't, 30% of the population has diabetes, whatever the population. It's some crazy number. It wasn't that.
Yeah, but like the Pleiadian culture, there's no such thing as sickness, right? There's no such thing as reduced energy flow. There's no such thing as like, oh, look, this part of me is chunkier than that part, and I'm not addressing it. Do you see what I mean?
Chunkier.
No, but that's what it comes down to. If you are not in tune with this, if you're not in tune with your system, which we're not, that's what it came down to. We're not.
We're absolutely not.
Then you would not know that there's a chunk somewhere that is quite literally disturbing the entire flow of the system. Like to them, the idea of you not recognizing there's a chunk. I mean, to them, the idea of a chunk is even silly. But like, if they look at us, they see our chunk and they're like, what? Right? And they understand that we're just living on this different mindset where somehow we are married to that chunk. We want to hold that chunk. And in fact, maybe we're even nurture that chunk. Yeah. And that's what it came down to. Not only we're not aware of our chunks, we like nurture them.
To us, it would be like, imagine you had a big, like a giant thorn stuck in your arm. It's like you would notice that and you would want to deal with it very quickly.
Yeah.
And the idea that someone has one in there and they're like, I just don't know why, something feels wrong, but I don't know what it is. And it's this giant thorn sticking in and blood's gushing everywhere. And I don't know what's wrong, but something, I don't know. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
We can't even conceive of that. And so that's like the next, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, they can't even conceive of the idea that is what densification, I mean, they understand through reincarnation processes that they have reincarnated here on Earth, that is what Earth experience is. But at the same time, if we're meeting their density now and we're coming into their density, then that's where we're going, right? That understanding of like, okay, we are a system, like we're quite literally a system. Now we interpret ourselves very rudimentary and physically, right? But it is still an energetic system, very etheric system. And it has this very fluid flow that is quite literally beautiful and very rainbow-like. I don't know if you could see it or not, but it's just gorgeous. And the second Like, imagine a rainbow, this beautiful rainbow, and imagine it's just like, like moving rainbow. And then you will look at it, and all of a sudden there was this thing where, like, oh, the light of the rainbow moves, and then it has to do that. You would notice that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe start thinking of yourself as this beautiful flowing rainbow. And then at some point you can kind of like perceive, wait, there is something in my rainbow flow that is causing the flow to be awry. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's that. So technology, one, of how we interpret things. Two, the other thing I wanted to say, and this is really exciting to me, is, um, you know, dimensionally, we have already like stored all the information and all the data for ourselves for once we come into this frequency band, right? So part of that accelerated like transition would be not necessarily rediscovering, but kind of re-remembering that the data, right? To accessing the data that is already held in our, you know, outside of our three-dimensional consciousness, but also just kind of like inside the grid that allows us to access it.
Yeah.
And so, that information is just there, and it will just start to open.
Right. I mean, we've all had glimpses of it, and sometimes, I mean, the fact that like so many, either works of art, movies, or scientific discoveries happened in parallel, simultaneously, from two different people, often in two different countries. The calculus being discovered, really, you know, by Newton and Leibniz at the same time.
Yeah,
And,
well,
relativity,
that's our
same thing,
interpretation of that, right?
basically. How many, what was it? There's the two asteroid movies at the same time, one with Bruce Willis, and I don't remember what the other one was. There's the ants and the Bug's Life at the same time. It's like there's all these examples of like same thing, same time, two different people
Yeah.
because they both tapped into the same thing.
Yeah, right. So these pockets of information, as they open, multiple people have access to them. And then, however they present themselves is very specialized. I mean, one, it needs to be presented into Earth, right? And so these people present it in. And then, but the reason why there isn't two is because everyone has this particular representation based on their personal experience of life of that information, right? And so, yeah, so, you know, that is the earthy representation of it, right? But imagine large pockets of that information just being open.
Yeah.
And then us catching it or interfacing with it, depending on however you want to put it.
Right.
And then what do you do with it?
Tuning into it.
Yeah. Yeah. You tune it, you can tune into it intentionally, or you will tune into it unintentionally. And so, well, that goes back to my pet peeve of unintentionally is actually probably intentional, because that's the thing I have a problem with.
I think dreams are us tuning into it,
But yeah.
at least to some degree.
Oh yeah, no. So
With
for those who are not able to interface with it, excuse me, on like 3D level, I mean, most of us do, right? But if we're not aware of that interface, one of the easiest interfaces whenever we fall asleep, we exit our like quantum perception of dimensionality, and so then we go into this realm of open interpretation of ourselves. And then open interpretation of ourselves has all data points. And then, beings or we are from our higher perception of self or our like transitory phase of evolution can interface with us and then give us data.
and the Greeks had a name for this. They called them They thought it was the gods or goddesses, the muses, who would inspire us with you know, how poetry or art or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, to some extent, right? I mean, Pleiadians come in and they want to encourage evolutionary shifts to help us shift into whatever phase of frequency we need to meet up with. Like if we're talking about it in the most recent past, you know, these shifts, these phases in our history have been going on for a very, very long time. Yeah, so Muse would be, but Muse is very Lyran and Pleiadian if you think about them, right? Like energetically, if you tune into them. No.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. They're very Lyran and Pleiadian. Like not Lyran from the Lyran star system, but like Lyran origin. And then have that Pleiadian um etheric essence.
Right. I didn't mean like I meant just the idea of something greater than you that is the source of inspiration and knowledge and creativity.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily an entity, but more of like the source of it all.
Yeah. But I thought they thought of them as entities.
They did think of them as
Like each
entities.
each one of them thought that they have an individual muse, right?
I don't know if it's you get your own personal muse or if there's just a handful of muses or one muse out there that just visits. Today it's visiting me. Tomorrow it's visiting, you know, whoever.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, but think about it, that's just
Right,
interpretation of intergalactic communication
right.
of back in the Greek days. But they interpret it as like these etheric beings that are like, oh, inspiration comes out of there or whatever.
Yeah.
I think any that's just this is what I need to point out. Any anything or any earthly concept, right, that would have an intention that would lead away from the shift, um, would be very difficult to interpret, right? Like if you would start to spiral out and you would start to interpret things from the negative standpoint, which is really hard to do for me, like right now, to even dive into that space.
Well, basically, where even things that are ostensibly good and nice things, but they're being done out of some pain body.
Yeah, but we talked about that forever. That's all we ever talked about. Do you still feel like that's your truth?
No, I was tying it back to the birthday
Oh,
situation.
well, no. Once you release that density, right? You mean like me doing things for the wrong reason around my birthday?
No, other people doing
Well,
things.
no. So yeah, I will point this out is w- if you are right, doing something for the wrong reason, right?
Doing the right thing for the wrong reason.
It does no, it's just doing something for the wrong reason. Period. Right? Like even if you think it's right, deep down you know it's the wrong thing. It's just you really trying to marry density. You're trying to really hard hold on to density,
That's a good way to put that.
right? So if you know if somebody's exit point lies in this time and space, because right now a lot of people will start to exit, like mass exiting, right? But it is because they want to hold on to the interpretation of density that Earth held into its space. And because Earth is basically opening the Pandora's boxes, personalized boxes, like it is ripping them open, right? I don't want to sound negative about it. It's actually great. But you have to work with what does it look like to have my box be ripped open, right? Nobody wants that, right? You've been trying to hold that box, but you will not have the ability to be held closed. Like that lock that you were able to keep on locking as it like pops open and you like push it back down and you lock
Stay
it back up
closed.
and you throw the keys and the keys appears magically in there and then it pops itself open and you're like, what's happening? Yeah, like the lock will just disappear. So there's not even like, a way to keep that lid on. And so for those who will continue to choose to hold on to that density, it will just be so hard. It will be incredibly hard to where the amount of effort that it will take to dig yourself back down and start creating the density that is not there will be excruciating and painful. Did I say playful or
You said painful.
okay, painful and playful. So depending on where you look at it, right? So those people exit points from the theoretical standpoint of interpretation, they will be playing in the playground of what does it look like for me to to fight for the density that is no longer there. And that's their playground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, you know, that that holds a lot of caveats for the rest of the population
Right.
who'd be like, wait, what kind of experience is this person having?
Right. But it's, it has ripple effects out to other people too.
Well, if you don't,
It can have ripple effects out.
So one, for those who are like, oh, okay, look, here's where I am. Like everything is being shut off and these boxes are being popped open. And all of a sudden I have to face all these stuff. And then you're constructively and productively opening, releasing, letting go, shaking it off like a deer or, doing Qigong shaking or you're, running and then quantitatively realizing that, you're trying to basically restore this flow. You're trying to allow yourself to restore into that flow. That is a very productive way forward that has actualization into the reality of truth, right? And that will be your truth. Of what does it look like for me to adapt into the new frequency? And for everybody else, their playground will be what does it look like for me to play into, continue to hold density that is no longer providing the space for that density. Do you see what I mean?
Say that last part again.
There you go. Imagine you are in the sand box, in the sand pit, and there's immense amount of sun, right? No, I'm sorry. First it rained, right? Like for hundreds and hundreds of years it's been raining. So that sand pit has been very, very wet. And you were able to build these beautiful structures. Like sandcastles are easy to build whenever
With wet sand.
whenever the sand is wet, right? And so you held all these structures because the sand has been incredibly wet. Like, and it's just been raining and raining and raining and raining. And you have been very used to playing in the sandbox with wet sand, right? Now all of a sudden the sun is shining a lot and that sand is no longer getting wet, especially at the top of the surface. It's just like, fluid nature of reality, right? Like lighter frequency to where the sand is just like, woo, you throw it in, the wind picks up and carries it off and there's no structure, right?
Yep.
But if you dig deep enough, right, you might still find some wet sand. So for a lot of times, anytime this fluid nature of being, anytime the reality of structure gets, or unstructured structure gets to be too much for us, we start digging into the depth to find the wet sand, right? But sooner or later, you're like, oh no, but I want to be in the new playground where now I play with this fluid sand. I will get to make drawings in the sand, right?
Right.
And I'll have a different interface with the same substance that is sand.
Yeah, you can't do the little Zen sand thing.
You can.
With wet sand.
Oh yeah, right. So now you're in that fluidity playing with sand quite differently than you used to.
Yeah.
The substance is still the same, but your personal interface with the reality or the density of that structure is different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wet sand versus dry sand. So for those who came here to awaken and then have the interface of, oh, I will go from playing with wet sand to all of a sudden playing with dry sand, and that is my experience. That is my quantum leap into interpretation of reality. I would say you and I are kind of on that plane, right?
Yeah.
And that is the road that we have been going, and that is the path that we have chosen.
And wet sand is literally less dense than, dry sand is literally less dense than wet sand, to continue this metaphor.
Dry sand
is less dense.
Yeah. Yes, so that metaphor stretches all the way through, as it were. And so and then will be the group of people who came here partially as a choice into sticking with still trying to interpret dry sand, the fluid sand, as wet sand.
Maybe in this metaphor, they're peeing on the dry sand to make it wet.
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. But right. So there will be a group of people who will spend a chunk of their time
trying to make sandcastles out of dry sand.
Trying to make sandcastles out
Which
of
is
dry
very
sand.
frustrating thing to do.
Yeah. Right. And then they will have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper in order to at first try to see if they can find the density. And I don't know how long that process is, how many years it will take them to figure out that that's not an interface that this plane of existence can be held in.
In this metaphor, if you dig up some wet sand in the baking sun,
it will become dry
It
sand.
doesn't stay wet for long.
No. Right.
Right.
So, and let's be honest, the longer we will stay in this interface, which we will, that's forward,
the less wet sand there is, period.
the less wet sand, because the sand will just
Eventually, it will dry
continue
out,
to be
yeah.
dry and dry and dry and
Right.
dry, and there will be no wet sand.
Right.
Nowhere down at the bottom will there be wet
Yeah.
sand.
On the beach, somewhere, if it rained, a few days ago, you dig down, you'll get some wet sand. But I imagine in the middle of the Sahara, where it hasn't rained in 100 years, you can dig all the way down and there's just no wet sand. Maybe it's cool because the sun isn't hitting it, but it's not wet.
No. Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah. No, but that's basically the metaphor, is that there will be people whose game here is to continue to find dense sand and play in the old playground of old structures, because that's all they have gotten used to. And then, so one, if you think about it through this idea of repetition, that is what they're comfortable with, and that is where they want to play in. And then, then the question that they will have to ask themselves is, how long do I want to play? Because it will be difficult, right? It will be difficult to continue to build old structures in the new paradigm.
Right. How long do I want to keep playing the old game?
Well, but it will get progressively more difficult.
That doesn't work.
It will be progressively more difficult. Quite think about it. The sand will continue to dry and dry and dry and dry.
It's a good metaphor.
No, I can't take credit for it. So, yeah, right. And so it's quite beautiful, because their experience, even though they're in the same playground as us, will be vastly different, because that is their choice into their gameplay. And then those who are on the other end of it, seeing through this paradigm, and then going, oh yeah, I'm now playing in the dry sand. The game is very different. Like, I'm just here to interpret how does it look like to play with dry sand.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you will have that time and space where your monkey mind is trying to get you to go down, it is trying to find settlement into old ways, in order for you to feel comfort, because somehow you're in the fear mode of, like,
the new and unknown.
The new and unknown.
Yeah.
And that's the only time that you will right now face the wet sand, is when you become afraid, right? Whatever the remaining wetness within you, that still wants the wet sand, will bring about, and be like, oh shit, this is completely different. Like, there's no longer hard drives, and now it's quite literally in a fucking cloud. And that will be vastly different, right? To where, like, wait, like, if I'm sick, guess what? There's no hospital for me to go to, because that doesn't work anymore. Like, I actually have to realize what this is, right, and correct it myself.
Right. There's some responsibility and accountability.
Oh no, it would be all on you, right? Yeah. Because you'll have to start interpreting yourself in the center of your being, in the truth of your being, which is everything what I've kind of been saying, but we're now there. But then I say this, and I don't want it to make it doom and gloom, because it'll be absolutely beautiful, because you are reinterpreting yourself at your actual truth, at the actual core.
Yeah.
And there's already resources in place. Like, I have been developing resources for the last 2 years for sure, with all of my channel material, with all the sound healings that I've been doing, and all of the meditations that just I recorded, that basically facilitate adjustment into this frequency.
Yeah.
But everybody else, like all of the other light healers out there, have been preparing their own set of resources. There's quantitative, unlimited number of resources out there that you can tune into to where you don't feel like you have to figure the shit out on your own. There's, light workers out there everywhere. So yeah, no, it's quite gorgeous. Just what's will be interesting for me to interpret is that, like, that the pivot of those who have been pivoting and now are going to face this amazing new reality, and then those who have been unwilling to pivot and struggling to pivot, but it's because they really want to experience what it is like to dig down and get to that wet sand.
Yeah. I guess I know what that's like. I've played that game for 40 something years.
Yeah, and
So
there's no there's no judgment there.
yeah. But
Um
like personally, it's like I just feel like I'm kind of done with that. I've done a lot of it.
yeah, but think about it right now. If you are already awakened to the idea that the shift is, and you're already playing in the light, dry sand, right? And then there's this etheric flow. What can you do? You draw these rudimentary shapes that do not hold structure. And in fact, realistically speaking, what do those shapes in the sand do? They hold energetic potential of ether, right? You're interfacing with a with a space that is actually you perceive to be empty. Right. I mean, that's the truth, right? We will start to interface with the fifth element, right? Um, which is like, wait, what? But that's beautiful. Like, for the first time, we will like think about what kind of quantum leap we're gonna enter into when all of a sudden we're gonna go. There's this whole other element that we have not been addressing. That, like, here's what we do with plastic, and here's what we do with water, and here's what we do with fire. But there's this whole other thing. And it functions based on intent and programming through a clear channel of communication. You're like, wait, what? Right. So, like, that right there is next level. So, if you just realize that you're interfacing with the fifth element, and then now your reality is based on this, quantum leap interpretation, you can't really go back into density of the sand. Like,
Right.
quite literally, just like I said in the beginning, you'll be like, but why would I?
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense. Why would I be building
Why would I go
structures
backwards?
out of wetness of the sand when now I'm literally building, I would say structure is the wrong word to use, but I will carry the metaphor around, up out of ether,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's quite beautiful. So yeah, I know this is kind of like a complete repivot of everything we have ever talked about, but I think we're kind of like we did this with our first chunk of a podcast, and then, like,
Season 3.
I,
Off to a good start.
yeah, I guess it's kind of like it's not actually completely at a at a 6-month pivotal point, but it just happened to be how our podcast lined up.
Yeah.
Obviously on purpose, etherically, but
Everything's on purpose.
yeah. Well, no, everything is, meant to be. So
Thanks for listening.
thanks for listening.